Welcome to Season 2 with the Market Mystics, where we discuss and redefine markets, wealth, and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Join us on the journey while we consider new possibilities with special guests who might just challenge a few perspectives. Get ready to dive in deep with your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
I see the recording button up at the top and it's flashing and it says recording.
So we must be live.
We must be live.
Welcome to the show. If you guys checked out Kim's little video she made on Thursday called Snafu, it's because we recorded an entire episode. Kim and I both distinctly remember hearing the recording in progress notification that Zoom gives. And then we got to the end and there was no recording. So somewhere along the lines, about 0.6 seconds into the video, immediately after she pushed recording, Zoom decided to stop recording. So we just took that as a sign that maybe what we talked about wasn't meant to be shared at the time. So we moved on.
True. We did move on. However, I did send a friend request to that person who made that comment, and I plan to have a conversation with him.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, we'll see where some of that goes. That would be great. Maybe it would be fun to, instead of to talk about the comment, to talk about the comment with the person. So
I feel like that would be better.
yeah, I think it'd be good. And in case you didn't watch it, comment was not negative in any way. Like we weren't talking poorly about a person. It was actually a really great comment. So anyways, we've decided to just kick the ball down the road and move on to talk about some new things. And so today's conversation is just kind of loosely rooted in some things that Kim has been learning about or having conversations about, and so I think it'll be fun to just dive into this a little bit. So kind of the root of the topic today is the sacrifice that we make, the sufferings that we walk through, and maybe just hypothesizing a little bit on the reason behind some of that. And I'd like, to be clear, we're not experts, we're not speaking in definites. These are just some thoughts and opinions based on where we are at the moment. And as we've talked about this before, as we learn, as we gain revelation, as we gain understanding, some of these things may change.
Right. This all was spurred on. I went and saw a movie yesterday with my father-in-law and my family, and probably not something I would have gone and seen on my own. I didn't know anything about it. I think it's called His Only Son. I think that's what it's called, but it's by the same studios who made The Chosen. And just through the movie, so it was no spoiler alerts here. It's all based on scripture. So it's like Abraham, okay? And some Isaac. But a lot of the theme was about the sacrifice of Isaac. And it just got me thinking during the film about how, the Lord does still ask us to sacrifice things, or at least he still asks me to sacrifice things.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the same for everybody, but it happens from time to time. And it tends to be things. Sometimes it's things that I don't care that much about. I just need to get rid of. Sometimes it's things that I'm really rooted to.
Those are the fun ones, aren't they?
Those are the really fun ones. So that's kind of the basis of this conversation. But then we wanted to talk a little bit about what does that look like in our modern walk, I suppose. Like firsthand, what does that look like?
Yeah. So part of the little conversation we had was just that, in my experience, the things that I've been asked to sacrifice tend to be connected to beliefs or identities that I've put on that aren't from Father. Not that the item or the action or the whatever that it was being sacrificed was specifically wrong, but that it was something that was standing in the way of me seeing the truth. And
Hmm.
so it has to be let go of if I'm going to reach the next level, the next belief system, the next identity. If I'm going to start shutting off these things that I've put on that have come through my generational lines, come through conversations with family or friends or myself or whatever, just any belief or identity that I have put on myself that God didn't put on me, like those have to go. No, they don't have to go. I think we are given opportunities for them to go.
I think so too. And I think trying to gather my thoughts on this, but I tend to think that Yahweh, when he presents us with these things, sometimes, well, most of the time, there's an outcome that is wildly ideal for us
Mm,
that comes from making this sacrifice. For the record, I've never been asked to sacrifice an animal or a child. None of those things.
right.
However, I mean, the things he's done, there have been like, it felt really significant to me, you know? But on the other side of it is this like magnitude of life. I don't know how to communicate this well. Obviously, I'm kind of struggling for my words, but I think sometimes it's even, oh my gosh, you're going to hear Illy in the background. Sorry. She's laughing at a video. Sometimes it's like the depth of the relationship with him, knowing him like more fully, um, walking with more authority or knowing more of his character, some of those things,
Mm,
which I suppose some people might not see as, well, that's an even trade.
right.
But really, I don't actually see it as an even trade either. I actually find it to be abundantly more receiving than it is the giving. But oftentimes as a true sacrifice will come with some sort of suffering
Mm,
because you're cutting something off, you're killing something in order to have life.
mm,
And I don't think death tends to be painless.
right. Yeah, I also think that there's a little bit of a distinction in just suffering and going through trials and battles. There's a little bit of a distinction between that and sacrificing something.
For sure.
Um, because, like this was something else we talked about. Like there's multiple places in the Bible, like specifically First Peter 4:13 says, "But rejoice that you share in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed at the revelation of his glory." And so it's like, you have that. You have the fact that, what was it, like 10 or 11 of the disciples were martyred. Like there's there is an abundance of proof that just following God isn't a guarantee that your life will be without pain and suffering and trials. But, it's not necessarily without point either. Like there's something on the other side of it. And sometimes I think about like, there's these funny memes I've seen, depending on what types of memes you look at, but these memes that I've seen where it's like, oh God, quit giving me your toughest battles. And then it's like God on the other side going, I asked you to fold the laundry. It
Mhm.
was like, like it's sometimes we look at these things in our life, and yes, that's a very comical, like lighthearted thing, but it's just depends on what you view as suffering.
Mhm.
um and so I think it is, you know like like that verse, rejoice that you share in sufferings. And there's like Paul talks often about, like, rejoice because of your trials, rejoice when you're in prison, rejoice when you don't have food, like all these things. And I think a lot of it has to do with the mindset that you carry through it. Like, man, the mindset that you carry through things has a huge impact on how your body and your soul respond after it. And I think this whole conversation, I think, is just about mindset beliefs for me. Like, how do I view when God says, "Hey, I need you to sacrifice whatever it is." Like, here's a personal example. Like, sacrifice your full-time job because I need you to let go of the idol of money you've been carrying. Like, that's something that I had to walk through. And I don't know that I'm fully through it. I don't know that I've fully let go of the system of mammon that I was walking through. But it's a process. And I think on the other side, God could give me another job and I would view it differently because of what I've walked through. I think that there's oftentimes God asks you to sacrifice things so that he can get you to a higher thinking about yourself.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes there's things that you go through where you just experience suffering that isn't necessarily God asking you to sacrifice something. I think there is a distinction between those two things sometimes. Um, but I think that on either one of them, the other side is determined by your mindset going through it.
Hmm. That's really good. I'm just reminded of the concept you introduced last year of the going up the mountain
Mm,
and being stripped away of things
right.
to get the higher perspective and then being sent back down the mountain, and you might be able to pick up some of those things again, but they look different and they feel different
Mm,
because you're different. I probably butchered that explanation.
I think that's great.
But I mean, we've talked about this over and over again, but some of this I think is right in line with that. Right? There's a lot of times that the Lord is asking you to like take off some of these things that you've been carrying or that you hold dear, like the mammon thing you were talking about. That's a big deal, right? Having a
Mm,
bit of a skewed view of finances and how they work and like where their value lies with you.
mhm,
Um, to strip it away to be able to then pick it up later and use it in a more powerful way and more in line with what his purposes are. But the brilliant thing about it is when you pick it back up to use for like his purposes, like I was saying, they feel like your purposes.
mm,
Like that top of the mountain view does this really beautiful thing of aligning your mind and will with the
mhm,
Father's. I don't know. It's like you have these peaks of oneness, right?
mhm.
Maybe I could say that. I don't know. I might really be taking this down another path. Josh is like, that's not what I was talking about.
Oh, that's
We
great.
have these peaks of oneness where you kind of get um, that unity with the Father and his will. And then when you come back down, you pick up the things, they do look different because they'll be
Mm,
used differently, right?
mhm,
They their purpose becomes different in your life. And I think so much of this happens that way. And I also think you're right about um sacrificing and suffering aren't always the same. There is long suffering. There is that happens without willing sacrifice,
mhm,
right? Like it happens. It comes upon you, and then you're in a time of suffering. And though it's not willful, I also think that there is life to be gained from it. I've
Definitely.
I've also heard this concept. I don't know what you think about it. And I don't know that I'm solid on it because it was years and years ago and it really struck me then. But I've been up and down some mountains since then,
Uh-huh.
about how there's so many places that it talks about in scripture taking joy in suffering. It's in James too, right? I mean, James as well.
Mm-hmm.
And but why does it say to take joy, except that we're in this unique time and space walking on the earth where we're able to walk through suffering
Mm.
with Yahweh because it's not present before you come to earth or after you leave.
Yeah, I heard someone just recently talk about this, and they were like, imagine you are in heaven where like you're in a state of perfection. You're in a state of union with Yahweh, and you're having a conversation with him, and he goes, "Hey, would you like to go spend a fraction of time on earth and experience all the emotions in a nervous system in a body? Like, would you like to go do that? Would you like to go experience like pain and suffering and laughter and joy and like heartache and all? Like, would you like to go experience all these things?" And because you're sitting there with this eternal mindset where, even if you were alive for 100 years and um I'm going to just go with like the most extreme things I can think of, like being abused and like going through like a Nazi camp or something like that, and you don't die, you spend 120 years doing that. Like, do you want to go do that? Like, yeah, I want to go experience life in a way that I'm not currently experiencing it. I want to go experience life in a body, because if you have an internal mindset, it's such a small piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blink in the eye.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just like, oh, yeah, I want to go have that experience. And so I think sometimes we get so limited in our purpose, in our mindset, and especially in our view of time, that we're like, man, these 80, 100, 200, 300, 400, however long you believe you can live, like whatever that is, it's such a small piece of like the eternalness before you came here and the eternalness after you came here.
That's so good. I've also thought about like how there are other beings. Think about like angels. They don't actually get to experience that like we do.
Mm,
And this is the thing that I mulled over. It was all those years ago when this concept was brought up. Um, like taking the joy and the suffering because we're allowed this time to experience this emotion unlike any other time, like you were talking about. Like we
mm,
couldn't experience this there. And it is so unique to who we are and the human condition in the earth. The angels don't come and experience the suffering, right? They are
mhm,
not allowed that. So there's this special thing about being part of his creation. And though it is painful, it's kind of an honor to be able to, like, if you can get into it that
yeah.
far, it can be a real honor because it's not allowed for so much of the rest of existence,
Mhm,
you know? And I know that so many people want, like, they will beg for death to get out of the suffering. And I know that it can be a lot sometimes. I mean, most of the time, suffering in any degree is going to feel like a lot. Otherwise, you wouldn't call it suffering. But sometimes it's that shift, like you're talking about, Josh, that mind shift. Like, where's your mindset in this? And what you can get out of it. So can it draw you closer to him? Because this is such a unique experience that nowhere else in eternity are you going to be able to experience this. Right? Can it draw you closer to him and make it a more personal and intimate thing? Or can it separate because you think you're being punished? Because I know that happens too. So many people suffer and they think it's all punishment, but it's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is like, it's a stretching and it's a refining, and it does hurt. I'm not even negating any of the pain that happens.
Right.
Or the damage that you feel like is happening. And it may cause some damage, but refining causes damage to bring out take out the impurities and bring forth the purity, right? And I hope this isn't like I don't know. The intent is not to downplay anyone's suffering. It is to say that maybe let's give a different perspective on it.
Yeah. I think the different perspective is great, because I really think suffering and sacrifice, it's all connected to mindset and changing the mindset that we have about a particular situation. It's just it's the key to getting through it. Like it's that important.
Yeah. It's wild. Okay. Well, thanks for this conversation today, Josh. It was good. You had some really great nuggets.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you listeners who are on this journey with us. If you ever want to reach out, feel free to do so. I don't know. We want to journey together. That's probably what I really want to say about all that.
It's true. All right. We'll see you guys on Thursday. Thank you for sticking around. Listen for new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Find us on all social media platforms by searching for Market Mystics. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Visit upperroomcd.com, where you can find more information about the hosts, projects, and guests. Go deeper by booking a coaching appointment focused on redefining identity and wealth in your life. See you next time.